Greetings, welcome back to Mad Poet Podcast. I am Alex Murdoch, the Mad Poet. Good to be here, and hope you're having a good one. It has been very warm where I am right now in the old London. I'm from the southeast, as they say. That's neither here nor there. Looking forward to this conversation to have with this very interesting guest of mine. Songwriter, a poet, and a creative entrepreneur, Mr. Ezra Vansel. I hope I got your name right, sir. How you doing?
That works. I'm doing great, and I'm hot too. I'm in Texas, and it's killing me. It's really hot right now.
Hey, yeah, I think we're feeling a little bit of what you're feeling. I don't think it's quite as extreme. But it's quite warm, unusually warm that we're used to over here. But it's great to have you on, man. Welcome to Mad Poet Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
I'm glad to be here, Alex. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming, man. I appreciate you giving me some of your time. I do have something to share. Just bear with me. So this is the quote from a piece. Quite nuanced one, but I think there's going to be a nuanced type of conversation. So yeah, just bear with me.
You're good.
In the desert, seeing dimes like smog, sniveling aloud at the round table. The nobles took 10, then commenced to be damned with their morals. No longer wanting to be loyal. No kind, thus I grow small. My ideals grow shallow, beyond toes. But I remain stupendous, still wanting for this world. Looking like hollow men in a pig pen, swimming in dirt. The piglet, like the timid, met dormant. Splash goes the matter, exposing malleable. Infallibility had wisdom after all. I knew limits, like the rain man, wanting nothing but to fall. Drop from the mountains, open curtains, exposing my flaw. Yep, just a quote. That's what we have for today.
I feel that one. It's good, man.
Yeah, that one's quite nuanced, but there's so many weight in that one that I thought you'd appreciate. Just the nuances and somebody that sees so many different things because of the lens that you wear and stuff, and the things that you being a poet yourself. Yeah. So I thought I'd share with you.
I kind of felt like a humble surrender in that. Like a surrender to what is,
Exactly. It's the sort of thing where, it can be so cinematic in a sense, where you just watch it happen. But to a certain degree, you can't necessarily control it. You can only be a witness, And I think there's power to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But without further ado, I wanted to start here. Could you share with us your take on emotional blocks and the many experiences that somewhat maybe define rock bottom? Or just, scraping barrel, so to speak, slowing to a halt when it comes to being lost in the sauce, they say on this side of the pond.
Yeah.
Or of speaking, pertaining the process of finding oneself.
Yeah. Yes, it was and your reading just there kind of touched on what it is an emptiness, that I found in my mid 20s probably. After hitting a peak, I was signed to a record label when I was young and still in my teens. And I had no other plans. I mean, I was going to be in music. It was going to be my career. I dropped out of school and it was good. I got signed, but then we like overdosed on the rock and roll lifestyle. And before I knew it, I was washing windows. That was my job. And I was like, what the hell? And so I probably spent a couple of decades trying to climb into some kind of place of feeling like my life mattered. I just couldn't bear this idea of being a silent voice in this world, washing windows or painting or whatever. I felt like I had something inside me to say. And so I always was trying to climb there and just, and I'd hit highs and I'd win some awards and it'd look all good and then just to fall again. And so I eventually just kind of walked off into, after a divorce, my family fell apart, walked into just despair. It was a place of going, I'm not going to play this game anymore. And I just want out, And so I started just trying to get out by drugs and alcohol, just trying to hide and be in oblivion. That was always my goal, just to live in an oblivious state. And before I knew it, it was kind of a game I was playing with kind of this dark side of myself. And I created a lot of great art during this time too. So I would see it that way, that I'm creating, look at what I'm making. But what was the price? What's the price for that? Is my life, is that a worthy price for this? And so I had this mix up of my identities where I was, instead of I'm Ezra and I am exploring art and I do art, I was this suffering artist. I was lost inside of this suffering artist, to the point where I tried to take my life a few times. It ended up getting really bad. I ended up getting a felony, faced some prison time. And I finally just, at the end of this, I kind of hit a rock bottom where, music, art, be damned. I want to live, and it really was like kind of having to leave. The only story I knew of myself, which is my whole life, was kind of, I had structured it around me, and then I kept reinforcing this idea of this suffering artist, in this world that's just all messed up, And I made a decision that I'd rather live. I don't care about music. I don't care about art. I don't care about anything. I just want to live, And so my life started changing around then. And that's where it really kind of flipped over. And what's cool is art and music, poetry, it came back to me in ways that I never imagined. It was very narrow back then. I only had one note I was playing, the despair note,
Man, you said that's quite powerful there. I think that what stuck out with me was the fact that again, we're talking about deciphering things, aren't we? So at first there's this situation of, and I always think about this as well, the scarcity situation and the advantage it is for someone like yourself or me, where to create you have to find something out of nothing, don't you? And that's where scarcity brings you, hence rock bottom. It's just, man, diamonds in the rough, as they say. But at the same time, it's a double-headed sword, isn't it? So it's kind of like you're poking yourself, paper cuts, just so you can scribe on the paintbrush. Something for the paintbrush to use, sort of thing. And you create these beautiful things out of pure chaos, out of pure pain, etc., etc. And I suppose there's supposed to be a graduation period, at least maybe in the natural process of things, because at the end of the day, you can't keep necessarily living in that state, because you weren't meant to maintain in that state. It was a period where you have to somewhat graduate to something that would define living, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know?
It's something of like, I can say that my young life in many ways feels like a mistake, but it was a worthy mistake. And it is that if you get past, I made a lot of mistakes in that time, but it's worthy if I can move on to the next picture. And kind of what you're talking about is, I know people that have like changed their life, and then their art becomes like a product. It becomes very narrow and niched into this new thing they're doing. Let's say like spirituality or whatever. They have a spiritual experience. Well, suddenly they abandon all the other, spectrums of the human life, and they focus in on that. So I always would see that, like people change, and then it's like their art dies. Where, like you're saying, I think there's a natural progression, whether you're an artist or not, in life. Like youth is like, you're going to bang up against the world. Your ego's going to be battered and bruised when you get through it all, for a good reason. What happened to me is I just wanted to give up, But on the other side of that is kind of this fuller picture of it all. And I think of my music now, I still love that music. I created that because it's speaking to a human condition in that time. That's definitely a part of our life, is that dark side of things. I want that in my catalog. But there's a whole, like I said, one note, there's a whole keyboard of notes I can play. And as a human, I can go over now and I can experience a whole different thing. And I don't deny that. And I even have those notes to play within the music that I play now, And so it's kind of an idea of knowing that we're, it's a very trite cliche, but this journey in our life, we're on a path, and where are you going to stop? Are you going to stop in the valley, in the dark valley? Or are you going to go over that mountain and see what's there?
I guess the thing for me at this point is a matter of discernment, because a lot of times perception is more truth than the actual reality. And what I mean by that is, sometimes we think we're still in the valley, but we're not, because the fact that we were in the valley to begin with, and we actually tread the valley, meant you're deserving. And so you come to a point where you're worthy, but you're still stuck in a state where you think, oh man, I still have to tread.
Your audio. There it goes. That's okay.
Yeah. So you think you still have to stay in this state, you still have to tread, because it's the only way to remain deserving, worthy, sort of thing. But
yeah,
once you graduate, I don't think there is any way to reverse that. You are who you are. And I guess what I'm saying is, it's just discernment, intent to know that I am deserving, I am worthy, and I don't need to stay in this state that is not necessarily long-term wise, it's not wise, it's not healthy, it's not, a place I need to be in. Because I guess what I'm saying is, you're so much more than that now, but at the same time,
yeah,
up here, you don't see it. I would use a simple analogy. It's sort of like, for me, the person that, wins the lottery, but they're not ready for it. And so, you're back to being broke before you know it, because it's that state, it's the only state you know, and you didn't know how to maintain. Whereas the person that, actually went there and actually won this whole thing in the right way, meaning that, you create something, a product or whatnot, you became of service to somebody, and you built, and you just expanded, you created wealth, you created greatness, etc., etc. You can maintain, you know how to keep what you have, invest, etc., etc. I think there's two mentalities here, and I suppose perhaps there's a certain mentality that comes with where you were when you're in that state and thinking that, there's no way out. And so you create this cycle for yourself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what it was, is a cycle. But you said something there that made me, because before I came out of the state, I came out of the state up here. I said I'm not, and it began with just accepting things that are, accepting the reality that I'm in. And that, we live in a world, like if I turn on YouTube, it's like 6 steps to become a millionaire, 3 steps to change everything. And those have their place. I've used some of that to learn something. That's great. But bringing yourself to a new level of life, of being, is you're not going to do it by next Thursday. You got to accept where I am. I'm in this deep hole, and I accept each step that it's going to take to walk out of this. But it started right here, is that I'm going somewhere else. Because I'll tell you, man, like my first year, so I was pretty strung out, on alcohol and drugs. I didn't know how to live without putting something in my body. That first year was hell to my body, but not to my soul and not to my mind, because I knew whatever, I'm walking in the right direction now. I'm walking away from this, and I don't really care how long it takes. And so you're right in saying it was a perception. I actually had a lot of fullness and joy in my life, because suddenly I'm no longer just going to let myself go round and round in the cycle. No matter what it takes, I'm going to walk out. And, finally, I will say one more thing, because embracing just the uncertainty of life, because it's not like, I've been clean and sober for 13 years, but life still happens. Life is still hard. I lose people, I fail. But I accept now that everything that happens to me is a part of my story. And I can either spin it this way, or I can spin it that way. That's part of my perception, is how am I going to look at this thing? And what I do is I take it and I make a song, or I write a poem, and I get in touch with that. I welcome everything that comes to my life. I welcome it, because now I see that it's all my treasures, because I have one individual life,
Absolutely. And to that, you're speaking about deserving and worthiness. I think one of the antecedents of being in that state is the fact that what comes with it, mentorship, isn't it? So perhaps we could lean into your experience of doing mentorship on this question in particular. How do you think we get there, or end up there in that state, perhaps, that we create this cycle for ourselves, in your opinion?
Yeah. I would say that the biggest thing is thinking. It's kind of what I touched on. It's thinking that this reality that we live in, that you're not traversing the same road as everybody else, and that you can somehow direct your life in a way that you command. And to an extent that's true, but it's all up here where you command it. But life is going to happen. So I think a lot of us getting into this cycle is an unacceptance of what is, accepting who we are, the place that we are. And for me, that's what it was, because I just could not accept my life, like I said at the beginning, of being at a lower state where I didn't have a voice. I wanted to be, I had a vision of myself, and I would die before I let go of this vision. Where instead, I think if I could have caught myself in time, I'd be like, look at what you got, man. I had a wife, I had a child, I had a family that loves me. This is all the greatest gifts of life I have, but we get these ideas, and a lot of them are put in by the world in our head to be worthy we got to be standing on this mountain or whatever, or we got to be over there, or we got to be like that guy. No, we got to be us. And we got to first just accept where we are to start finding who we are, you know?
Stick a pin right there. With that being said, how important do you think it is being grounded for an artist? Or is there any relevance to such an ideal as being grounded for an artist? How important?
I think, us artists are, I love artists. I mean, I spend my whole life around them. There's definitely a power in becoming untethered and letting yourself go and just traveling through life kind of with the wind. There's definitely a beauty to that. But, I think the artist that takes their job serious, because we have a vocation, we have a job to do. And my vocation as an artist is to take experience and translate it to the heart of other people. And so if that's really my job, then I want to be untethered sometimes. Sometimes I let myself off the chain and I just let myself go. But sometimes I know that I've got to be grounded because I want to keep telling my story. I want to keep translating the human experience through my life. And this is back again to just reality. The ungrounded soul is going to just float off. We have so many artists that we lost them too young. Where what could they have told us as they looked at the world from the eyes of a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old? Man, you know what I mean? We lose them because they got addicted to the power that's in being untethered. So I'll say this real quick is I kind of have a method of allowing myself to be untethered sometimes, free floating, no schedule, just walk off. I've got a forest out in my backyard. Just walk off in the forest and disappear for a few days. And then I have a way of getting myself back grounded. And for me, it's a spiritual way of getting myself grounded and getting myself back where I'm going to participate in life and I'm going to give what I have as best I can to whoever is out there to hear it.
Amazing. So to another question, the creative process. What do you think the importance of your ecosystem or your environment is to what you do as an artist and musician with all these things and the importance of the different things that comes with it and the things that perhaps you don't know? For example, being grounded. And you sound like you have a great setup now that perhaps you can see the value of it. So what do you think are some of the most, or one or two of the most important things to maintaining? Because we know artists can get there, but how do they maintain sort of thing? Certain things that
My biggest thing is my mornings, that I don't let anything have my mornings. I don't let my phone, I don't let the world come in until a certain time in my day. And so I kind of protect the first hour of my day. And the routine for me is I have readings that I do. I have a journal. I sometimes write poetry or write a song during that time. But what it is that first hour is to remind me what I'm doing on this planet. I'm not like making plans or goals or anything like that. I'm just trying to remember, why am I here? Who am I? And how am I going to handle this day? And so that's huge to me. I've got to have this point to check in with myself because, my relationship with myself, I'm an artist, and the deeper I build this relationship with myself, the more that I have something to give. And so I make time for me to have this relationship, and it's quiet time. So I don't know if that answers it. That's probably the most important thing to me, is just maintaining a rhythm of, I don't think I've missed a morning in 13 years of just sitting down and having a conversation with me. I have a meditation and prayer I do all kinds of things in that time I want to remember, first of all, that I'm here for a reason, that I am worthy, that I can show up to this world and I can give of myself and not be ashamed.
2 things that come to mind. I'd say the biggest thing that you've encapsulated on a bow tie level is knowledge of self, understanding yourself, your cues, your do's, your don't do's, just knowing what works, just to kind of to kind of pull you up or to pull you down, just to get you to that state where you're optimal, sort of thing.
Were you going to add more? Well, so an artist is we're like creatives are problem solvers,
Correct.
Like when you get a verse, I know you know this, when you're like working a verse or something, you're creative. You got a big problem there and you're just working on it in your mind and on paper. And we ourselves are, we can be that work of art. We can like work on ourselves in that way. And that's kind of the biggest thing of getting out of these cycles, is getting this distance on yourself where you can look and see how do I react? Why do a big thing with me is like I'll go by and days have gone by and I haven't done any of my creative work and I've just get lost in all these tasks. And I can kind of take an outside look and take some time and go, what sets me off on this path of tasks and everything? And what it is for me is kind of fear of doing the creative work that I want to do, and if I don't learn that, especially my fears, if I don't learn what my fears are, because our fears are like a compass. They're pointing the opposite way of where we need to go. It's telling you run, and some of my biggest fears are the creative work that I want to do. Can I really do this? And, should I really put myself out there? And so I got to get distance from myself. And I'll throw in there lastly, having it like I have groups of guys around me that are creative, doing the same thing, is having somebody else that's looking and being kind of a mirror to you too, where we could talk about this. And I have actually a weekly meeting with some guys where we talk about places that we failed that week,
For me, I'd say this is the perhaps also grounding. I think the ability or the willingness to be vulnerable, when you're creating the art, you can feel like Superman, and even Superman have days off, but most people, they want to stay in that state, sort of thing. Never want to throw that cloak away, or just in the ground just to wash it at least. They always want to stay in that state and just wear this armor, sort of thing. And that means you never come back down and you burn out, Burn out. You burn faster than you're supposed to. And it's just...
Absolutely.
After a while, you're not meant to... I remember I wrote this line. It's one of my books. It's something along the line of, I was not designed to coexist outside of time, sort of thing. And it was me sort of alluding to that, pretty much what we're speaking about now, where yes, and I actually said this as well, like, pretty much you can elevate, but I have to come back down to take breaths,
Mm-hmm.
We're still humans at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Walt Whitman, he said a quote, I won't get it right, but something, he was being criticized for contradicting himself. And he said, I contain multitudes. So yeah, of course I contradict myself. And, vulnerability is, I think in my artistic life, it is the masterpiece that I work on the most. Is I want to be, while I'm here on this earth, I want to be real. I want to be myself. And it's not easy. I can't always break through the masks and the personas that my fear and the society has put in my brain. But I want, before I leave this place, to know that I was true. You know, even if I'm not successful, I want to know for myself that I was true. And artists, you know, we go through so much. We go through dry areas. We go through pain. I know exactly what you're saying. I'll sit in there and be writing a song, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like moving me. And I could picture it moving other people. But the truth is, a lot of times I put it out there and it's like, you know, 1 like, 2 likes. It hurts. It hurts. And so how do I continue to put myself out there over a lifetime if I can't open myself up and take those arrows and be okay with it? Because like you said, I'm just a human. You know, I fail, but I have something that I believe in, and it is this creative power. It is this interpretation that I've been given and you've been given that I must pursue, because there's answers in it for me. That's where it starts. It might be answers for somebody else, but there's answers for me, and so there's already value in what I'm doing.
That's a whole thing, man. The ability to be vulnerable is such a easily discarded thing for an artist, I would say. And also, you know, you're in a situation where reward system is, especially when people see you. But let's speak to what you said. When those paper cuts, because, you know, it's pretty much like that, it's paper cuts. And you're thinking, you know, you're fine until maybe you get the 999 one sort of thing. And you're like, hold up, man. Yeah, my vision's kind of blurry. I'm losing quite a lot of blood over the years. You know what I mean? Like, they get to you. And even that in itself is, for you to see that, you know what, this is taking something away from me, is an ability, is actually initiation of vulnerability. To understand that, you know what, I'm not the same because I'm bleeding and I need to, you know, fix these things that are leaking me, sort of thing. So I think it's such an underestimated thing for an artist to be vulnerable. But there's 2 types of vulnerability, I would say. You know, there's individual, like just being vulnerable with yourself. I think that's the first way, the first one. I think that's the most important though, because you don't necessarily have to be vulnerable with somebody for them to see what's going on with you. Because, you know, your body is a reflection of your mental sort of thing. After a while, it shows. But I think, as they say, you can't change anything until you decide to do it yourself. So you might help somebody to a degree, but unless they're willing to help themselves, it's a done deal. There's nothing you can do. So I think the ability to be vulnerable with yourself is paramount for an artist. Because
absolutely, yeah. I'm sorry I cut you off there. That's good.
No, I was about to finish.
Yeah, I mean, it's got, like, it's kind of the idea of where's the value start for our art. Like, I just think of it as, you know, the step in our process that actually it goes to the world is way down the line. But the first steps are all about connecting with something true inside of us, you know, and it is being very vulnerable, because first of all, the ideas of the world have to go away, and you have to say what you got to say. You can't do it in fear. But then you're going to face this idea, like you're talking about, going out into the world and being vulnerable there. And I do think they're real different things. Like, the vulnerability with myself is I just want to open wide up. You know, I don't want to hide anything from myself. But when I get in front of the world, there's again that reality that there's parts of ourselves we have to protect, and that we have to, so that we can continue, because it's not a pretty place sometimes, you know. It's and so when I go into the world, there is a vulnerability there through my work that I've created. And my vulnerability is that I'm going to display this before you, and I'm going to do it with all that I have right now. You know, I'm sure you've seen performances where people have literally just poured themselves out for who? For strangers. This is my vulnerability. I've created this work. In it itself, it is my vulnerability. And what I will give you is I will pour myself out, my energy and my heart for you, strangers. And here you go. And that, again, is another work of art.
And you know what it is? There's something very honorable about that as well. And it's like, you know what? Even if it's just the mere standard of things, just because I'm just going to do it. Why not? You know? Because this is what it takes. And this is the bill that I'm willing to pay, sort of thing. Man,
absolutely,
that's powerful. We don't have much time, but I want to say this has been a pleasure, man, and thank you so much for coming through, giving me some of your time.
Alex, me too, Alex. I really enjoyed this conversation. I love where it went, and it's a wonderful thing where we have no agenda and we just talk about what comes up. I love that. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing about, you know, being an artist. As you'd imagine, you know, it's like a type of language, you know, and you meet somebody that lives the life, and it's, you know, it's not necessarily very different, but it's very nuanced. And there's so much to talk about, you know. It's like catching up with an old friend, so to speak. Yeah.
Beautiful, man.
It's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure.
You too.
So,
thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Mr. Ezra Vansel. Thank you, man. Till next time. Take care.
Mind over matter. Overcompensating. Overstatements. Crookedness relating. The soul's churn in return. Mental overstimulation. One word.